Welcome everyone to our wet season seminar for 2018. For those of you that haven't met me before, which is probably the majority of you, my name's Tim Penney. I'm an aviation safety advisor with CASA, and my role is purely safety education, human factors, training and that type of thing. I'm not an auditor or an inspector or anything like that. My role is purely safety education. So why are we here? It's obvious that there are a lot of pilots. Many pilots arrive in the top end, fresh out of flight school. Many of those flight schools are down in the southern parts of Australia. And they come up here to the top end, everywhere from Cairns to Broome, to start their careers. And they arrive up in the top end, often with only a few hundred hours at most, and with very little exposure to any real type of operational flying. And it's no secret, especially when you chat to people that have been up here for a while, that the hazards involved up here in the wet season, especially during the wet season, are quite unique, are not really found anywhere else in Australia. We're going to focus on some of the main hazards, some of the main things that can come and bite you on the backside when you're flying across the top end in the wet season, especially for the VFR pilot, and especially for the VFR pilot even in the early stages of their career. Even if you're an IFR pilot, even if you fly turbine equipment in the flight levels, even if you've been up here for many years, I'm sure there's still some very, very good information that you can take away tonight. Because understanding these hazards and understanding the risks that flow from them, guys, and the decision making that's required, that's the vital stuff that will keep you alive. We have things like the Bureau of Meteorology, we have air traffic control. They provide services to the aviation community up here, and that's fantastic. But even the stuff that our friends in ATC and our friends at the Bureau of Met provide do have their limitations, okay? They're not always the silver bullet we may think they are. So we're going to have a bit of a chat with our subject matter experts from air traffic control and the Bureau of Met as we unlock some of the secrets of the wet season. What I'm going to do is just ask the question, what is a hazard? People go to university, they do PhDs in hazard and risk management. You can make it as complicated or as simple and straightforward or as practical as you like. Essentially, a hazard is something like that. Anyone seen that before? It was 2004. It was in Iraq during the Iraq War. It was a 100 metre by 100 metre hole in a runway about half a metre deep. You would probably call that a hazard. Put simply, guys, a hazard is anything, and this is the CASA definition, which we use in a lot of our literature, it's anything that is a source of potential harm. So a dirty big hole in a runway is a source of potential harm, especially if you try and land an aircraft on it. Wait till you see the next picture. Okay? That is a hazard. It's something that is a source of potential harm. And when we go flying around in the wet season across the top end, there's lots of hazards out there. It's a hazard-rich environment. It is a hazardous environment by definition because there are a lot of sources of potential harm. By the way, that was runway 33 at this airfield in Iraq. There were no runway lights. No NOTAM was issued. By itself, it was just a big hole in the concrete. Okay, the risk, I suppose, wasn't realised until something like that happens. C-130 landed and ripped the guts out of it. Bit ordinary, okay? No NOTAM issued, no runway lights, okay? The hazard was realised. That hole in the runway was a source of potential harm. That was the end result, okay? The hazard was realised when someone decided to land on the runway. There are all sorts of other factors, no NOTAM, no runway lights and all the rest of it. So risk, separate from hazard, hazard's a source of potential harm. Risk is when that hazard has been realised. It's the chance that something's going to happen that's going to cause you to impact or have an impact on what you're trying to achieve. And we look at risk in the form of two things. The likelihood of it happening and the consequences if it does. That's all. We're not trying to overcomplicate things. You know, risk can either be a high risk or a low risk. Risk can either be acceptable risk or unacceptable risk. Is there any such thing, guys, as risk-free aviation? None. Risk-free aviation, you leave the aircraft in the hangar and you walk away, but no one has a job. Okay? We have to accept at least some type of risk in order to turn a dollar. That's what we do. Who wants to start the ball rolling with one of the major risks that pilots face flying around the top end during the wet season? Let's go. Yes?
Storms?
Storms, thunderstorms. Whack it down.
Lines of convection.
Lines of convection. Yep, very good. We could give you the Met brief. That's pretty excellent. Lines of convection. What else can bite you on the bum up here? Yeah?
Turbulence.
Turbulence, Pete. Okay. There are also weather risks. There's organisational risks. There's all sorts of risks. There's physical risks too. Give me some more, guys. Come on, let's go.
Rapid change. Things change.
Things change quickly. So the rapidity of change. Good one. What else? Poor visibility. Yeah. What can cause poor visibility up here in the wet season? Rain will do it. Okay. Dry season. Just out of interest. Dry season. You suffer from poor vis in the dry season? Yeah, because half of Arnhem Land's burning and all the smoke comes from. What else we got? Yes?
Yeah, runway conditions.
Runway conditions. So things like contaminated runways, okay, affecting braking performance. It runs the risk of runway excursions off the side or off the end. What else we got? Yep.
Animals.
Animals. Elaborate on that.
Like kangaroos.
Kangaroos, yeah. Are they more active in the wet season? I don't know, that's cool. Whack it down. Wildlife. Okay, could be all sorts of stuff. Everything from bird strikes to, heaven knows what. Yeah.
Congestion when, say, a thunderstorm shuts down the airport.
Yes.
And it's banked up with aircraft.
That's right. And RAF ATC aren't cooperating and they're being a pain. Yep, exactly. What else? Yep.
Water and fuel, oil, glasses.
Contaminated fuel, probably. Maybe contaminated fuel from overwing refuelling, contaminated fuel from drum stock. Yeah. What else? Keep going, guys. Yeah.
Dehydration.
Dehydration. Yeah, you sweat a lot, don't you? You can lose litres of fluid. Okay. Or, you're in the cockpit, it's stinking hot, it's humid. What else? Think about wet season operations. Yeah. Operational pressures, Pete. Operational pressures to get the job done, especially if the weather's not cooperating.
Fatigue.
Fatigue.
Just the dynamic nature of the weather in that unpredictability.
Yeah. Perhaps the unpredictability of the weather and that rapidity of change, which we spoke about before. Things are rarely static for very long. Wind shear. Okay. Harry from the Bureau of Met will talk about things like low-level wind shear and gust fronts of microbursts and stuff like that. That's brilliant. Yes, sir?
Almond fuel, reduced payload.
Yes. Reduce ability to turn a dollar because you've got to carry extra fuel for things like weather holding. Yep.
Unforecast holding.
Yep. Unforecast holding. TAF said it was great, or the area forecast said the storms weren't going to roll in until certain time. Sure enough, you get out there and they're already forming. Okay? Because the weather forecast ain't perfect. Harry will tell you that a bit later. They're not perfect. It is a forecast. Okay? It's sometimes crystal ball stuff. Yeah.
The roads being closed and more pressure to get someone through.
Yeah. If the roads are cut, there's more pressure on the pilot, there's more pressure on the company to make that communication link, to make that transport link. So other modes of transport, I suppose, Pete, being compromised, puts more pressure on you guys to get the job done.
Last flight considerations.
Last flight considerations. Yeah, elaborate on that a bit.
So fuel tempo or interfueling.
Yep.
Requirements.
Yep.
Last flight, full.
Yep. True. Yep.
The requirement for alternates, whether planned or unplanned or unforeseen.
Yep.
might come up.
Yep, the requirement for alternates. And not every alternate might be suitable as an alternate. So your alternate planning has to be pretty well spot on.
Just general lack of infrastructure in remote part of the territory.
Yeah. The lack of infrastructure during the wet season can really make things difficult. It's hard enough in the dry. When we can land on runways, they're not flooded.
In the wet season, for those of you who haven't been up here long, everyone gets really tired because they can't sleep because there's storms. That's the pilots, the engineers, the fuelies, everyone associated with the aviation system
Yeah,
can suffer from fatigue during that period. And that plays across everything
Yeah.
we're talking about. So if everyone is under the pump, happens in the build-up, everyone goes slightly crazy, and it happens during the wet season. So it's a layer of extra hazard over the whole system that relies on people being at their best.
Mm.
So often people don't operate at their best.
yeah. And we don't, yeah,
Sorry, just also maybe
That's all right.
like increased debris, like we talked about runway conditions.
Yeah.
And I kind of more went down the water on the runway, but
Yeah.
I guess we had a member of our work who, I don't know, tree fell on his car, so something
Yep.
like that.
Yep. There's all sorts of hazards with things like falling debris, blowing debris, that type of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, VFR operation into the won't see, golf no instrument running.
that's it. That's probably the big one, isn't it? The VFR pilot losing the visual horizon and being stuck in cloud.
Let's say the threat of cyclones and everyone rushing to either secure aircraft or get them out of town.
Yeah, people having to do things too quickly. Yeah. It's interesting where Greg mentioned fatigue earlier. I'm just about done here, but think about how you react when you're tired, okay? We each react in different ways. I know when I get tired, I get short-tempered and a bit shitty. Some people get clumsy. Some people get forgetful when they're tired. Have a think about, for example, how you yourself react when you're tired, and just keep, I suppose, a bit of a lookout for those red flags. And with regards to fatigue, the fatigue limits that we have are exactly that. They are limits.